Hey, welcome back, everybody. Of course, you know me. My name is Dr. Keith McNally. This is Coach's Corner. I want to get this right. I'm here with Thomas Garrod,
Garrett.
Garrod, Thomas Garrod. I do apologize, but anyway, you contacted me, so this must be a really special conversation. Now, I know I'm here in Virginia, and you are on the other side of the United States. Where are you, man?
I am about 80 miles northwest of Seattle. So cross the water from Vancouver or Victoria, Canada, and due south from Vancouver, Canada. So if we could draw a line there, you're going to find me
I
on
love it.
Whidbey Island.
I love it. I've never been out there. I've only been on the East Coast except for one time. I had to take a trip to Phoenix, Arizona. But other than that, man, that must be beautiful out there.
It's really amazing. It's a beautiful place. Of course, it's been very dry this summer, but it is a gorgeous place. And I'll tell you one thing, the hottest we had all year, all summer has been 80 degrees. So, and that's normal for us. That's actually very hot for us.
Okay.
More typical is 65 to 70 in that range in the summer.
At some point, I'm going to have to take a trip, but until I do, we need to focus on what we're doing. And so you run a very special type of business because you are a helper by nature. What do
That's
you
right.
help people accomplish?
Well, our job is to get people to work. So for the last 15 years, we have helped people who have some skills get experience. If they're going to school, we encourage them to participate with us so they can learn and have context for what they're learning. But ultimately we get them to work. So we give them experience that makes them a credible candidate. I tell people employers hire experience, not education. They like you to have some education, but it's experience they're actually hiring, and it's proven competence. So if you've done it before, then they assume you can do it for them. They love to have you educated, but the main thing they're looking at is your experience. So if you're in college and you're finding your way through and you're thinking that as soon as you graduate, people are going to line up and give you a job, that's not very common, you know. So what really happens is they say, come back when you have some experience. And everybody says, well, that's not fair. How am I going to get
How do I
experience?
get experience, right?
If
Yeah.
you won't give me a job, and
I
ultimately the answer is you come to Keelworks.
I tell you where that really focuses. I was in the IT field and then I taught IT, and that is such a typical statement that you have to have the experience because you're playing with somebody's infrastructure or software. And if you can't prove it, they don't want you touching their systems. So
Exactly.
I
Yeah.
totally get it.
And not only that, it's hard for them. If they hire you and you can't do the job, then they have a problem. They have a problem in that they don't have the work done that they need doing, but now they have to figure out what to do with you. And that can be a problem. So they're very cautious. They're very much afraid. And we help people develop a resume. When they work at Keelworks as a volunteer, they put it on the resume as a job. And I tell them, your job isn't to tell people that you don't have to tell everything. You just say that you're working, and if you worked here and produced, then you're not lying.
Yeah.
The fact that you're not being paid like a normal job is not relevant. You
So
don't
let's
have
talk
to.
about that. Who
Yeah.
who who should come to you? Or flip the side of that coin is who do you help find a job? So college graduates, people in
College
college, veterans.
graduates, people, we frequently, especially during the recession, we had a lot of people who had been out of work. Some people, and it's not at all uncommon, very common for people to get a degree in a field, not have experience, not be able to get an immediate job, and take the job that's available. So it's not the one they want. And so as time goes on, they got to stay there because they got to pay the bills. But the farther they get away from working in the field they got their degree is less valuable. So these people come to us frequently, sometimes 5 years after their degree, and they say, I still want to be an instructional designer. I have a dream of being a graphic artist. And so we let them work for us, and we give them opportunities, and we teach whatever we can. So there's all kinds of subtleties to a field that people don't get in school. Like in instructional design, they never learn what real needs analysis is, how you dig into the audience and that sort of thing. Graphic artists are never, they don't understand their job is not to make art, but to solve business problems. A
So it's a
lot of
different way of thinking then.
right.
Yeah.
Our UI people often think their job is to design by themselves. And I have to say, you actually are working for a product manager who has a lot of information, and you need to be in step with that person.
Wow.
So there's a lot of this subtleties to the work that we all do that school doesn't actually give you. And also, if anybody's in school and they're working here at Keelworks related to the goal they want, they're getting context for all that theoretical stuff they're getting in school. So we typically, to answer that question, we have UI designers, we have front end and back end developers, database developers, we have instructional designers, we have project managers, we have graphic artists, as I've mentioned. I have people that want to be product managers. That's a hard one, but I find ways to make it work for them. We have openings for writers, but we don't get those very often. Frankly, I find very few people know how to write. I mean, graduate students don't know how to write. I mean, it's crazy, but
Don't tell them that.
no, I think many of them will privately admit that, but we help them. We teach them how to write. If you want to know how to write, we'll help you, because I'll tell you some things that you hadn't thought about, which is don't write a word until you know who you're writing to and what they need and what makes them tick. Don't think about what you want to say, but think about what they need to hear in order for them to do what you want them to do. Because
So
that's
it's
why you write.
so it sounds a lot like you teach people how to solve problems for other people, like organizations. So it's a different way of thinking.
Yeah, we help people to be productive in the work they're doing, and we also make sure they have an effective resume. And we always look at resumes the same way we would look at, analyzing for a course, or if you're building a piece of equipment. Who are you building it for? What's their problem? So for a resume, we're asking, what are the questions the person who's considering hiring you wants to know? And what is their life like? Are they, we know they're very busy. We know they're tired of reading blather. They're also looking at lots of resumes and they're quickly overwhelmed. So we have to organize information so they can process it efficiently. Otherwise, they're going to toss your resume. So we help people get a good resume. We have a template, and I have all of the logic that I give people. I send out a document to them that has the logic. And one thing I always tell people is, you don't have to listen to me. You listen to my logic and you ask if it makes sense. If it doesn't make sense to you, don't pay any attention. If I'm not explaining why I have one approach, then it doesn't matter. There's no such thing as best practice. We don't care about best practice. We don't care what other people do. We care about what is the situation we're dealing with and how do we make that work. So whatever the common practices oftentimes are the worst possible thing you can do. What everybody says we should all do. I remember one person said, we should never have the objective on a resume because it's always full of blather. And I'm saying, yeah, you're right. It is usually full of blather, but does it have to be? And also, have you thought about why an objective, what's its function? Why would it be useful? So if you're going to toss it, before you do that, ask what you're tossing. So it's this logic for a resume, and starting with yourself in the head of the person reading your resume, that is, we try to make sure they get. So
So,
back to
well, Earl, I want to get back to earlier in the conversation where you talked about you help people find jobs because you give them real practical skills, but even that takes time. How long does somebody actually stay with you in order to gain the aptitude needed to fill a job?
it depends on the role that we're working with. Developers come to us with very solid skills, and they are working, they're immediately able to contribute in a meaningful way often. Some don't, some are still learning, and I pair them with others. but other ones are very competent. So we try to put them where they can do what they need to do. If a person is very competent, can lead a team, I rarely have them stay more than 2 months. They can stay as long as they want to, but the demand for people like that is high, and they're competent, and they get their confidence, so they get a job. And when people get a job, they leave. Um, I love them to stay, but I know that it's not going to happen because a new job is always stressful. It takes all your energy. Um, when it comes to instructional design, where I'm teaching instructional design, they can't really effectively walk away with important knowledge until they've stayed for 6 months. And that requires them to give at least 6 hours a week. If they're not given 6 hours a week, they're probably not going to, it'll take a whole lot longer, you know. And 6 hours sounds like a lot, but these people are often working, going to school, have a family, you know, so 6 hours, they always start by thinking, oh, 6 hours is nothing. And I have to explain to them, there's only 168 hours in a week. And how much of that are you spending sleeping, eating, driving? You know, a lot of it.
So
So,
part of getting a job is giving somebody a stellar resume, right? And
yeah,
then when that person really has an interest in you, they're going to go back to that resume because that's now your document. That's the document that proves that you are who you say you are. Do you, and that means they might want to call your previous employer, which would be you. Yeah.
yeah. And we get that. We get people contacting us all the time. And what I always tell people is make sure that whatever you tell an employer, you tell me, because I cannot contradict you even by a day. Because if I contradict what you told them, they say you're a liar, and then they toss you.
Right.
I've had this experience with organizations, and they can be very black and white about this kind of stuff. So I
Right.
tell them, you know, and you tell me what you told them about your role here at Keelworks. I will make sure it works. And I let people pick the kind of job description that they have. I mean, the title. If you want to be called a software engineer when you're developing, that's fine. If you want to be called a front end developer or a full stack developer, that's up to you. I don't specify, as long as you're able to contribute, you know. And if you're not able to contribute, then we help people get to the point where they can contribute.
Good. I like
Um,
that. And
the
so
other the
go
other
ahead.
part of this, by the way, is the portfolio, and that is the reason why I called you, because the portfolio has to be. If you want to get a portfolio put together, you usually get a template, and the template is designed for any kind of portfolio. But what you put in a portfolio, if we analyze it just like we analyze the resume, it needs to be something that answers the hiring person's questions, and it needs to answer those questions quickly. If it takes them down a rabbit hole, they're gonna bail. Also, the more involved your resume is, I mean your portfolio is, the more exposure you have for criticism. So I say, you know, we have to understand what it is they need to see, what questions they need answered, and we need a very succinct file that answers that question as quickly and shortly as possible. But we don't know. I know exactly what an instructional designer needs to have in a portfolio because I worked in that field for 25 years. But I do not know what, I can try to guess, but I don't want to do that. I want to know what managers hate when they look at a portfolio when they're looking for a graphic artist or a developer or whatever. What do they see that they wish they would never see? And what do they never see that they wish they would see? And what are their questions? What is the resume or the portfolio actually answering? So I need to talk to these people, and it can be hard. You know, you can try contacting Microsoft, and what you get is a recording that says, if you'd like to apply for a job, go to this site, you know. And I'm saying, I don't want to apply for a job. I just want to talk to a person. Well, you can't get them,
Right.
you know.
So who
And
exactly do you need to talk to? I want to, because I want to share this with those people specifically
I
and
want
then put this
hiring
on the
managers.
platform that
I would
gets
like
you in
hiring
contact.
managers. I like people who are looking at portfolios and resumes for employees for developers, for graphic artists, for UI designers, for UX analysts. I want those people so that I can know exactly how to specify. So we're building an application that will build portfolios specifically for those who are not developers, and even for developers, because we're going to design it to be effective. Developers can rebuild it and do whatever they want with it, but the instructional designers, they're not coders. They're and graphic artists, they're not coders. UI UX people, they're not coders, so they're not going to be able to build it. But we're going to have an application that will tell them what to upload, and it'll, once they've uploaded the different components that show their work, and we'll specify the kind of stuff they need, then they'll click a button and it'll build it. And so then they will have a portfolio that answers the hiring person's questions and looks sharp. You know, that's ultimately this portfolio should prove that they have the skills, not so much proof because anybody can build it, but give them the answers to their questions. So that's what we want. We want to make sure. I had a one of my instructional designers had been working with us for over 6 months, and he kept getting interviews and he kept not getting a job. So I asked him to show me his resume. So I looked at his resume. He used the template we gave, and it looked pretty solid. But he had a link to a portfolio, and I hadn't really talked about portfolios up to that point. I give people advice, but I hadn't been looking at them. So I looked at his and I said, okay, now I know why you're not getting a job. Because your portfolio is basically saying you don't have a clue. You know, and it probably came from his master's program, and it was like the instructors were having him put assignments from school in there, and they're just not rigorous enough in those master's programs to hold people accountable. What passes as acceptable homework is not the same as what passes as an acceptable sample of competence, you know, to an employer. You might think that it should be, but unfortunately, specifically in instructional design, that's just not the case. A lot of times instructional design professors, since they know that the students don't have the proper software, so they're going to point them to free software, which is pretty cheesy, and the product looks really lousy. And they're not holding them to the kind of rigor that would be essential if you were working for Boeing, Intel, Microsoft, IBM, any of these major corporations, Apple, Google. They have a style sheet and standards that you really got to meet. And if
so let me ask this question. How do people get in contact with you?
Well, they can reach me at, they can email me at thomas.garrod@keelworks.org. That's probably the easiest.
Okay.
They could text my phone number. Should I give that?
Yeah, go ahead and give it since you've already said it, because I'll put it in the description.
Yeah, it's 425-765-2330.
Are you on social media?
Not much. I mean, I'm on LinkedIn.
Okay.
And you can find me there.
I'll add that description, but primarily you would like people to email you directly?
Email's best. They can text me if they want to. If they call me on the phone, what would happen is it's not in my contacts, so it won't ring.
Okay.
So if they left a message, that would work, you know. So
well, what I want to do is ensure that people contact you because you really need this help today.
I do.
Because your students need to find jobs.
That's right.
Yeah.
In order for us to be effective, we need to get them employed. If we're not getting them to work, we aren't doing anything. And that's just the way we look at it.
I love it. That's perfect. Thomas, thank you so much for this conversation and for being a guest on Coach's Corner. I will see you next time. Take care.
All right. Thank you so much.